Welcome back to the off cycle. Continuing on here with the Pursuit 2270 center console. I think I've decided to make a change in plans about how I'm going to approach this. I do have a lot of the wood shipped out of the center, but there's wood in there that is saturated, but it's still fairly firm. It's not rotted, and that's kind of towards the edges and the ends, and most of it is in the bottom, like the hardest place to access. Most of the more solid wood is in the bottom, which is kind of odd to me, but getting that out is proving to be an absolute nightmare. I have fabricated an extended chisel and started to chisel it out, but just the amount of time that it's going to take to get it out of there, I really just think it's not worth it. I think I would rather do glass work and body work and gel coat work than to sit here and fiddle around with getting all this firm but saturated wood out of this transom. So I think I've decided to go ahead and cut the back of the transom out. It will also make repairing the internal stuff easier too, as well as I will actually be able to inspect the stringers doing it this way. From what I've seen so far on the starboard side, I have got enough transom wood out where I can see there is glass capped on the back of the stringer. So I don't think any moisture got in there. But if I go ahead and cut the back of this transom out, it's not going to be as strong as it was if I were to just get all this wood out and fill it with liquid transom. But I still think it will be plenty strong enough. Just going to take more glass work and more labor in general. As far as materials and things like that, it's going to take more, but it's going to save me time and frustration. So the saving of frustration is really my big selling point on doing this. But I'll turn around and show you what I've got so far. So as you can see, all this brown is sawdust, wood rot, wood sawdust, everything from the plywood. And this is probably the fourth batch of it that everything else I've cleaned, swept up, rinsed out of the boat. But you can see it's just everywhere, all caked inside the bottom of the boat. And what that is from is a hog out with my chainsaw, my Stihl gas powered chainsaw. And it worked pretty well. I ended up cutting out the front part of this just to help me get everything out. There was damage where these bolt holes and everything go through anyway. So making a new panel like this and putting another one in really wasn't a big deal because there's a good amount of access right here to work. So it was worth, making a new interior panel. But now with access from both sides, it'll really be a lot easier to glass this in and fill this in. See if I can shine a light in here and you can see that right down here, these phones don't want to focus on things sometimes. Right about there is about halfway, not even halfway, probably a third down in the transom. The wood gets where it's not just falling apart and rotting out like it is over here and like it was in the top here and over here. So that makes it very difficult. I did go ahead and extend one of my air chisel. I machined it out in the ends and took an actual chisel, and it works okay on the like semi-rotted stuff, but the stuff that's actually still firm, that's wet, it really doesn't, it doesn't want to cut. It just kind of mushes and fails, and it really doesn't want to cut through it. And even when it does cut through it, it only cuts through it a little bit before it just kind of jams up, and it's going to take absolutely forever to get all that out of there. So I'm done screwing with it. I would still have to get everything over here, this bottom lip, I'd still have to get everything out of there, and I'm just done screwing with it. So the quickest way and easiest way to do this is going to be to cut the back of the transom out. Unfortunately, I really didn't want to do it that way, but it looks like that's how it's going to have to be done. So I'm about to start taking my measurements and marking the transom around, and we'll go from there. All right, so I've got the transom pretty much marked out where it really needs to be cut. On the inside of the boat, it doesn't go all the way to the floor. It comes up off the floor like an inch and a half, and then I'm going to go a little bit beyond that. So I'm trying to leave like a 2.5 on the top and a 3-inch lip on the bottom, which would give me quite a bit to tab in. And then on the sides I have more than enough. You know, the actual side of the transom stops like right about here. It doesn't even go all the way over, you know, because it starts to curve, so it can't go that far over. The only other concern that I have is that what I'm going to do about the hull number, because this is all going to get cut out from here. Like this whole hin is going to end up getting ground down and whatnot. So I'm not sure about how to go about replacing that, what the legalities of on it. I'm going to have to do some research on that. But worst case scenario, I guess I'll have to gel coat it and then reinscribe by hand the hull number. I mean, that's done on a lot of hulls anyway, so I don't think there'd be any issues with that, but that may be how I have to do it, unless somebody else knows, you know, a good way, or somebody maybe out there that could make me a silicone reverse mold that I could use to press it into soft gel coat. I don't know.
Finally! Nobody knows my name. No one knows what I'm thinking. Boom! There goes the fire. I'm insane again. I'm running my mouth. I'm screaming and shouting. I'm pissed off at the fact I know you're trying to bring us down. That's why we got time. We got to keep on. We got to keep on fighting the war. Fighting.
Alright, we've got the back of the transom cut off and most of the wood removed. There's a little bit left that's stuck, but that will get ground down with the flap disc and whatnot when I clean up the inside skin and then build a new skin. So the next step is to get all this wood out here that's sitting down between the two layers. Initially I tried to start with like a Forstner bit, and I was just going to go along with a Forstner bit, but the problem is some of this wood is so soft, the Forstner bit with the small little dimple in the middle can't really index very well, and it's jumping all around. I try to up here, it's definitely, so the next step was I bought some of these kind of chainsaw looking things for the angle grinder, and I just tried that after putting my welding gloves on and everything. Like that thing terrifies me, honestly. But it is working impressively well, really well. So this shouldn't take long. It throws a lot of sawdust, so I'm gonna go ahead and put my full face mask on and get going on that. But if you got to do this, I definitely recommend getting some of these kind of wheels, get some life insurance, and upgrade your health insurance to minimize your emergency room costs for the month before you do it. But it should make quick work of it, so I'm going to get going on that now. One thing I did want to point out and mention, you can see right here, this is a piece of plywood that is coming through, kind of sticking through like the first layer, and right here kind of, it was like, this is chewed up from the chainsaw and everything, and my chisel, it was perfectly fine like this. It's just chewed up from the chainsaw, but that is actually the ends of the stringer coming through and indexing right into the wood on the transom. Why they did that, if they think that adds any bit of strength whatsoever, I don't know. The only thing that does is allow any moisture that's in the transom to wick into the stringers. Luckily enough, all the wood from like here down was still pretty solid. It was wet, but it was pretty solid. So luckily my stringers are still very solid. They're wet, so I'm gonna have to let them dry out. This is, you can see right here, the top edge. But mind you, I was told from Pursuit that the stringers and everything were capped off with chop strand before the transom and everything was done. So based on what Pursuit told me directly, I'm thinking my stringers are going to be safe from any water intrusion that this transom had, and that's not so the case. It looks like I'm getting lucky. It looks like there is glass here, but I think that's just the inner layer of the transom. That has nothing to do with the stringer itself being capped off prior to everything else being done. So just a good piece of information. These boats, the wood stringers are tied into the wood transom. So if you've got a super rotted and really lowly rotted transom, you're gonna have stringer issues as well. It's just another example on the long list of poor build practices, poor design, just poor everything so far on this boat. I'm really displeased with it. I'm not impressed at all. And the glass work in this thing is atrocious at best. All right, I've got everything cored out. The bottom and the sides, just about everything. There's a little bit of wood. I just take a razor blade or something and just get that last bit, a little bit more chiseling out, but I just pressure washed it out so I could see what I was dealing with and what all I have left to do. Obviously I got some spots, like there's a hole here, so I'm gonna have to lay some glass in some areas in the bottom of this just to make sure it's sealed up, because I still plan on pouring. I'm not going to mess around with trying to do Cusa and get a good lamination and all that. There's so many voids and areas to fill that just the exceeding cost to mix up thickened epoxy or thickened resin and fill all these voids and everything. Like back here in the corner, there's a big chip in the corner where all this shit would pour out, so I'm gonna have to seal that up, put some glass in there. But the stringers are still sticking through. I'm gonna wait on trimming these just because everything's kind of exposed to moisture right now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to basically go around and grind all this extra wood off and everything. I might do another layer of glass in here because this thing is just so thin. And once I get all that stuff ground out, then I'll go ahead and trim this, because once I trim this, I'm gonna try to let it dry out for a while. But since I'm spraying it, I don't want to trim it and then get it wet closer to where I am gonna be trimming it to, just allow that moisture to wick in to where the areas that's gonna be trimmed off. So since it's exposed, I'll just leave it until I'm 100% ready to trim it down and get everything prepped and glass over it. But yeah, the stringer is slightly glassed. There is one layer of 1708 over it, and but it's not even over it in all areas. Like up here, it's just resin. There was never any mat over this. So Pursuit telling me that the stringer is fully encapsulated and capped off at the end before it touches the transom. That's a bunch of bullshit. Absolute bullshit. This stringer definitely is tied into the wood transom. I'm lucky that this is solid. It's not falling apart. All this right here is just from the chisel I was sticking down in there and all that stuff. It's rock solid. Like, it hurts my finger to push on it. It's solid, but it's tore up just from me trying to chisel out all this transom wood, because I didn't know it was tied in at the time. I didn't know until I started cutting everything out. But it's not looking too bad. And it's definitely worth the effort. A lot easier to do it this way than trying to go down through the top. There's no way, having just done all this, get all this out, there's absolutely no way I was gonna get all that stuff out from accessing it from up there. It would have been impossible. This thing worked really well. This tool, like I mentioned, worked really well. Kind of all I didn't hog everything out. All I did was I came to this side, the grinder on this side and the blade here, so I could cut as deep as possible. So I just cut along the outside skin as close as I could. And then what I did is took my pry bar and kind of split the plywood in half and just kind of split it into two pieces, and then put it here. Then I just put it here in the outside and was able to pry up the first layer, and then I was able to get in there and pry up the second layer. So you don't have to hog everything out. You just need to create you a channel where you can get a pry bar in there and pull it out one half at a time. Kind of just hit your pry bar all the way along and split that first piece and you should be good. It is a little tough because the all the plywood that is in here, I can't see any right now, but the two pieces of plywood that they laminate together, there's no glass in between them. I think there's just resin in between them, but they staple them together. There is a ton of little staples. So when you are cutting all this stuff out, especially when you're using that chainsaw wheel, you got to be really, really careful, man, because once one of them, it grabbed that staple just right and didn't cut it, and it really jumped the grinder. You know, I'm glad I was wearing my welding gloves. I didn't knock it out of my hands, but if you don't have a lot of time on an angle grinder, it probably would jump it out of your hands.